At some point, you stop trying to make friends, not because you hate people, but because something about most interactions just doesn't feel real anymore. You can sit in a room full of people, hear them laugh, watch them talk, and still feel completely alone. And the strange part is, you don't even want to force it anymore. It's not that you gave up, it's that something inside you just doesn't connect the way it used to. Most people go through life without questioning much. They talk, they laugh, they connect on a surface level, and that's enough for them. But at some point, you started noticing things others don't. The way someone smiles, but their eyes don't match. The way conversations feel rehearsed, like people are playing roles instead of being real. The small lies, the fake enthusiasm, the subtle tension underneath normal interactions. And once you see it, you can't go back. It changes the way you look at everything. You start questioning interactions that used to feel normal. You notice the gaps, the things people don't say, the energy behind their words, and suddenly, being around people doesn't feel simple anymore. It feels layered, like there's always something underneath the surface, something unspoken, and you're the one who keeps noticing it. You can't pretend it's not there. You can't sit in a conversation and ignore how forced it feels. So instead of feeling connected, you start feeling distant. Not because you don't want connection, but because what's being offered doesn't feel genuine. And then there's the conversations, the same patterns, over and over again. How are you? I'm good. And for a moment, you try to believe it. You try to stay engaged, but something feels off because you notice nobody is really there. They're talking, but not connecting, listening, but not understanding. And after a while, you stop responding the same way. Not because you don't care, but because it feels like you're the only one actually present. You start to realize you're not tired of people. You're tired of interactions that don't mean anything. Tired of conversations that go nowhere. Tired of pretending that this is enough. Because deep down, you know what real connection feels like. Even if it was rare, even if it only happened once. A conversation where you didn't have to filter yourself, where silence wasn't awkward, but comfortable, where you didn't feel like you had to perform. And once you've experienced that, everything else starts to feel like a downgrade, like you're settling for less, just to fit in. And that's when silence becomes different. It's no longer uncomfortable. It's peaceful, because at least in silence, nothing feels fake. For you, socializing isn't effortless. It costs energy, not just a little, but a lot. Every conversation, every reaction, every subtle emotional shift, your brain processes all of it. You notice tone, you notice pauses, you notice when something feels off. And while others are just being there, you're absorbing everything. So what looks like a normal interaction feels intense to you, and after a while, it drains you, not physically, but mentally, like something inside you has been used up. So when you leave, you don't feel energized. You feel tired. You need space, silence, time to reset. And that's something most people don't understand. They think, why don't you just go out more? But they don't realize, for you, it's not that simple. Because for you, every interaction has a cost. And what makes it even harder is that your mind doesn't just experience interactions, it replays them. You leave a conversation, and hours later, you're still thinking about it. What was said, what wasn't said, what someone meant, what they didn't mean, and it doesn't stop. Your brain keeps going, processing, analyzing, trying to understand everything on a deeper level. So while others move on easily, you stay with it longer. And that's exhausting, not just in the moment, but long after it's over. Which is why you start protecting your energy. Not everyone gets access to you anymore. Not every conversation is worth it. And slowly, you begin to choose distance, over depletion. This is where most people misunderstand you. They think you're antisocial. You don't like people. You're isolating yourself. But that's not what's happening. You do like people. You just don't depend on them in the same way others do. You don't need constant interaction. You don't need attention to feel okay. You can sit alone for hours and feel completely at peace. Your mind keeps you company. Your thoughts are enough. And because of that, your standards are different. You don't let just anyone into your space. You don't keep people around just to avoid being alone. You'd rather have no one than the wrong ones. And that makes you selective, not broken. And the more you understand yourself, the less you feel the need to explain it to others. Because most people won't get it. They'll tell you to just go out more. Meet new people. Put yourself out there. But they don't understand that you're not avoiding connection. You're avoiding disconnection disguised as connection. You've experienced what real connection feels like, even if it was rare, even if it didn't last. And once you've felt that, everything else feels empty in comparison. So you wait, not passively, but intentionally, because you'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who don't truly see you. And if you're honest, this didn't happen for no reason. At some point, you trusted someone, maybe more than once. You opened up, you let people in, and it didn't go the way you expected. Maybe they changed. Maybe they left. Maybe they weren't who you thought they were. And that stays with you. Even if you don't talk about it, your brain remembers. So now, you observe more. You take your time. You don't trust easily anymore. Not because you want to push people away, but because you've learned what happens when you don't protect yourself. So now there's a distance, not visible from the outside, but real. And it makes connection harder, but also more honest. And even if you don't think about it consciously, your past still shapes how you see people. Small moments, conversations, situations that didn't sit right, times where you trusted someone and it didn't end the way you expected. You remember how it felt, even if you don't remember every detail. And now, your mind is more careful, more observant. You notice patterns faster, you pick up on things earlier, and that changes how you connect. Because now, you don't just look at what people say, you look at what they do, how consistent they are, how they treat you over time. And if something feels off, you don't ignore it anymore. You step back, quietly, without drama, without explanation. You just stop getting closer. Here's what most people never understand. Having no real friends doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means you've stopped accepting what doesn't feel real. While others stay in shallow connections, just to avoid being alone, you chose something different. You chose honesty. You chose awareness. You chose depth. And yes, that path is quieter, sometimes lonelier, but also more real, because you're no longer pretending. You're no longer forcing connections that don't feel right. So if you feel like you have no real friends, maybe it's not because you're difficult. Maybe it's not because you're too quiet or too distant or too different. Maybe it's because you've learned to recognize what isn't real. And once you see that, you can't go back. You can't pretend. You can't force connection where there is none. So you wait, not for more people, but for something real. And that kind of connection is rare. But when it happens, you won't question it. You'll feel it. Because real connection doesn't feel forced. It doesn't drain you. It doesn't leave you questioning everything afterward. It feels natural, effortless, like you don't have to think about what to say next or how you're being perceived. You can just exist. And that's what you've been waiting for. Not more people, just the right ones. And for the first time in a long time, you won't feel alone, even in silence.